Welcome to We Have No Need to Do Our Hair for Shooting a Video Friday. Today we're talking about the first few days of Mythic Plus, because we have looked at the raid, sure, fine, but it's not even Mythic, not even many guilds have gone into Heroic. Meanwhile, there have been, of course, way more players jumping into Mythic Plus, and they noticed quite a few things, both in the terms of the difficult dungeons, the easy dungeons, the difficult levels, how high have they been pushing on the early days, as well as the specs, which tanks they have seen the most, which healers they have seen the most, what kind of damage have they seen out of the specs in their groups, etc, etc. And that's what we are taking a look at for today. So as we start talking about Mythic Plus, let's say that the release has been pretty successful if you consider the amount of Mythic Plus keys done in the first day compared to Season 1 and Season 2, with Season 3 doing quite well. You know, usually you tend to see an expansion go in decline where the absolute peak will be in Season 1, then it goes down in Season 2, then it goes down in Season 3. Meanwhile, as a testament to the good retention of players in this expansion, you see that Season 3 is basically just about as high as Season 1, which would be very good for the player base. Now, point number 2, as far as the dungeons themselves, let's just point out the outlier before everyone comes in here complaining. Yes, Tazavash, Streets of Wonder is the hardest and most overtuned dungeon at the moment. I'm not sure in which numbers do you want this explained. These are some of the easier numbers for you to understand. You can see that Tazavash has a completion chance of 54% average when the top is in the 90, 80 to 90% plus percent in terms of completion, while Tazavash is a disaster, essentially. They are basically 30% below the average. These numbers are reminiscent, if you remember, of the early week 1 results of dungeons like Ruby Life Pools in Dragonflight, or things like Grim Battle, stuff that was in the 30 to 50% success rate before having to be nerfed multiple times by Blizzard. Tazavash right now is in that same situation, right? The main complaint is that this is a 5-boss dungeon with a bunch of RP, a convoluted roads to dodge your trash, a completely devilish, awful mini-boss before reaching the last boss, and all of this with a very tight timer of 32 minutes, when in Shadowlands this used to be a 38-minute timer. And, this from Keystone Guru, you can see essentially the wipe chances during your trash. Yeah, that supernova, that collapsing star of heat before the last boss is where the majority of pugs will go and die, either from the mini-boss itself or because in the attempt of dodging the mini-boss while trying not to pull any extra trash in there, they will end up ninja pulling and die. Meanwhile, the slightly higher wipe rate at the beginning of the dungeon is very likely due to the beams, the spawned beams that players don't realize they're getting cut by and die. Those are the more annoying parts of the trash in this dungeon. You can also see it side by side, the difficulty of the key level. This one is the difficulty of streets, just streets. You can see the chance for you to time streets already goes below 50% in a +7. In a +7, you only have one chance in 3 to time streets. If you try to do a 9, you have a 1 chance in 4, and if you try to do a 10, you have a 1 chance in 5 to time this key. Now you compare this chance for streets with the chances on average for all dungeons, right? And you can see that the key level is still above 60% chance to time it even on a +10 on average for all keys, compared to the 19% chance of streets. So that's our first point. Yes, streets is by far the hardest. Now, as for the other dungeons, you can see the most run dungeons in here being Floodgate. Remind me again, why are so many players trying Floodgate? I don't think there are many best in slot trinkets coming from Floodgate. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure you have things like Lily and Parapodia from here. You have, of course, the Sack Brood from here. You have, of course, the Signet of the Priory from this one, as well as the Soliel's Secret Technique from this one. I'm not sure what's going down with Floodgate being this much played. Maybe it's just RNG. Maybe just more keys have rolled Floodgate right now. You can also see the dungeon times, back to pointing out the difficulty of the dungeons. The majority of dungeons are being two-chested on average. You are finishing with 20+% time left on your timer, meaning 6 to 8 minutes left. Streets is barely, just barely. That's another testament to the difficulty of the dungeon. So this is the pre-section of Mythic Plus, talking about the difficulty of the dungeons and the ease of dungeons, as well as the popularity of each of the keys right now. Because of course right now it's more relevant to do the dungeons for loot than to do them for, for score or whatever. Now, though, we are done talking about dungeons, we have to talk about specs. We have to talk about who is being played, right? As well as the performance. So, talking about the DPS. The DPS, we do have some consistent predictions compared to what we had before the season released, like Frost Decay, like Marksmanship Hunter, both Arcane and Frost Mage. Those were expected to be very popular. There is also Red Paladin, which is always an asterisk, and technically even Havoc Demon Hunter, due to being very popular specs by themselves. Regardless of whether or not they are meta, regardless of whether or not they are doing good, they are always consistently played a lot. So in terms of play rate, there are not many surprises when it comes to DPS. When it comes to healers, again, more or less the same. Resto Druid, Discipline Priest, and Resto Shaman also being very popular compared to these specs is not that much of a surprise. And lastly, tanks. These were also the tanks we were expecting being popular. Those are the popular specs. Now, in terms of the meta, of course, early on, you can't really tell. Early on, this will be just a rainbow of colors, just like this week one, right? You can still get some idea, of course, like, for example, seeing Resto Shaman very popular early on, which turned out to be good until it was nerfed. Or in Season 2, you saw Vengeance and Disc Priest starting out strong even in week 1. This week 1, it's a bit more fought over, right? You have 3 different healers, you have at least 3 different tanks, possibly 4 different tanks, and for DPS it's just random. DPS is just everyone trying to do keys for their gear right now, so you don't get to see any particular special popularity besides the one we were already expecting, like Frost Decay, Marksmanship, and Arcane. The one perhaps more surprising is Assassination. We did mention Assassination doing quite good AoE damage at the cost of, if we have it here, at the cost of their absolutely mediocre single target damage, especially when they go in Mythic Plus. Their single target damage goes down even more. In Mythic Plus, though, in AoE as Assassination, they have been doing very well. So it is nice to see them doing well. Elemental also was quite popular in the PTR for Mythic Plus damage, just like they are going to be very powerful in the raid in a different hero talent for single target damage. The results, though, in terms of actual damage. So after a grand total of 2 days and a few thousand runs for of course the popular specs, right? You have 105 runs for Fire Mage and 258 runs for Augmentation, compared to the 6,000 runs for Arcane Mage or the 6,000 runs for Frost Decay, of course, because they are expected to be way more popular. Now, we have said this in the video about the raid. This will be the same in this video for Mythic Plus. It depends on your tier set, which right now you don't have. Many specs, actually, statistically and scientifically, everyone in here will not have a tier set 4-piece unless they have gotten at least 1 piece from the raid. So if you haven't gotten a tier token from the raid, you simply have no way of getting 4 set bonus already. So there's going to be, of course, a big wild swing in power level the moment you get to complete your tier, depending on the specs that are gaining the most from their tier set. This is the same thing we mentioned from the raid video, the raid results video. There are certain specs that can gain some significant amount of power, even compared to the tier set of last season. So if you were to unequip, the moment you get your 4-piece, you know, you have kept it in your bags because you were waiting for the 4-piece to be complete. Then you completely swap it over your old tier. Some specs can gain 23 or 20 or 22 or 27% more damage. Others are gonna gain 7 or 6 or even go in the negative or 4% damage. So obviously the moment these tiers will be completed, there will be a massive swing in power. That's why one of the predictions, for example, of Arcane Mage or Frost Mage being meta in Mythic Plus, right now they are doing terribly. That's not that relevant. Frost DK will be one of the best specs in Mythic Plus. Right now they are mid, right? They're completely average. Meanwhile, specs like Affliction, just like we mentioned in the raid video, is one of the best ones right now. Same goes for the 2 rogues and even surprisingly balanced druid, right? The so-called garbage being specs that was doing tank damage before getting last minute buffed by Blizzard is now one of the better ones in terms of performance. But you know, performance is always the least relevant before you get not to your full power, because it will take a few weeks for you to reach full power, but at least have the schematics of your full power, which is the new tier set, to build up then your item level and possibly even your better trinkets of this season compared to the old season's trinkets. So these results in terms of damage are a bit less relevant than when it comes to the actual popularity, for you to take a look at which of the specs are being played more. Now, in terms of play rate, of course, some specs will remain popular, as we said. For example, this was the release of Season 2, the release of Liberation of Undermine. This was Ret doing absolutely terrible damage, and then you look at the popularity and Ret is first. Right, Ret stays first almost all the time. Havoc is another super popular spec. Beast Mastery Hunter is also another, or hunters in general, not this hunter, the actual hunters remain very popular, you know, regardless of the meta they are in when it comes to the general population. Of course, it goes down if you start filtering for like high keys, you know, for the competitive level, but right now we don't have high keys. Right now, the majority of players are trying to do +10s, right, for their max Mythic Plus reward in the chest, in the gear they can loot. So you can't even find any common, you know, any common hint even at the good groups if you were to look at the most popular, for example, compositions. You have, for example, for healers, you see Disc, you see Resto Druid, and you see Resto Shaman. For DPS, you have it flooded for now by Ret Paladins. One thing stays the same. This line right here, in terms of the top 20, maybe even 30 most popular groups, all have a Frost DK. That's the only thing you have in common. The second one is a mage, whether it is Arcane or Frost, is one of the more popular ones. And then the rest one is, for now, mostly Ret. When it comes to tanks, is Vengeance for now over Prot Paladin. But again, this will be bound to change way more. As it is normal, this is mostly just grouping together the most popular ones. So obviously, if you look at the specs popularity and these two are the most popular, it's just more likely to see them in more groups, on average, compared to, you know, one of these specs right here. So when it comes to Mythic Plus, for now, it was more relevant to point out the current disparity when it comes to keys, when it comes to the dungeon difficulty at the moment. So I am expecting by next reset to see some significant changes to streets. Perhaps changing the timer just a week into the season is a bit too drastic, so perhaps simply just nerfing, first of all, the trash count in streets, taking away some mobs from the trash, or removing, for example, some of the patrols around the zone, as well as a few nerfs here and there for the dungeon to make it more in line with the rest of the keys of the season. When it comes to the actual specs and their popularity, it was just nice to see the first few takes of what is being played in Mythic Plus, but we will have to see, of course, the developments, not even of this week, because this week, as we said, most of your power will come from looting more gear from Mythic Plus, but you will have to wait next week, because next week you get another clear of the raid, which means near certainly you will get your 4-piece. You have more chances of getting your better trinkets. You have your second spark to craft something. So this opens up Mythic crafted 720 item level two-handed weapons crafted next week, which is going to be huge for specs that can play two-handed weapons, like DKs, both Frost and Unholy, like Red Paladins, like Hunters with a ranged weapon, as well as casters with their staff. So massive power jump between the, first of all, the Mythic Vault, then the second Spark for possibly even either a double single craft or a single two-handed weapon craft, as well as the 4-piece. So this week we are just checking it out for interest, for curiosity, but next week is where the larger power jump will come and we will start to see some more significant power jumps, power level increases of the different specs. But for today though, on this Friday, we are done having this overview on the first couple of days in Mythic Plus and how things have been going, because I myself also have to go back grinding Mythic Plus for gear. So we have to say goodbye to each other for now. We're starting the goodbyes by thanking everyone for having watched the video, together with, of course, everyone else who's been supporting completely for free by liking and commenting down below, as well as subscribing to the channel itself. Now, with these things out of the way, thank you guys again for watching. See you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime, apparently it's just like 3 days, two maybe even days of heat before pretty much the summer ends. We are now done with plus 30 degrees weather.